A woman in purple sits upon a grand throne, reflecting on the long journey that has finally brought her to this moment. She looks upward with grim determination, a mysterious black marking visible on her shoulder. A red-haired man in uniform enters the hall, announcing that everything is ready for their departure. He gazes at her with steadfast eyes, assuring her they can leave whenever she is prepared. She thanks him and rises from the throne, her decision made. He reacts with a flicker of surprise as she stands to face him. She gently cups his face, her voice soft as she speaks his name with concern. Dylan? Grasping his collar with sudden intensity, she swears a solemn vow to protect him. Dylan is visibly moved, thinking to himself that she is, and always will be, his everything. Their hands meet in a tender, reassuring clasp. Dylan reverently kisses her gloved hand as she affirms that she feels the same way. With newfound resolve, she looks at him and says, "It is time to go." Together, she and Dylan walk forward, united in their purpose. The scene shifts to a memory of a sunlit cabin in the woods, a time when she was just a happy child. As a little girl, she plays peacefully before waking in her cozy home. A man with light brown hair enters with a cheerful smile, announcing he is home. The young girl rushes to him, joyfully welcoming her daddy home with a warm embrace. Her father pats her head lovingly, telling his daughter, Luciella, that she is a precious treasure. But that happy life is shattered in an instant, as Luciella is seized, crying out in terror for her father. Her father struggles against guards, screaming for them to release his daughter. A regal figure, King Ruvitz Algamond, appears and scoffs at the father's love for a monster. A hand reveals the mark on Luciella's neck, confirming she is demon-born. The king smirks with malevolent ambition, thinking this power will let him rule the world. Pinned to the ground, Luciella's father begs them to take him and spare his daughter. King Ruvitz Algamond delivers a cold, merciless command. End him. As Luciella watches in horror, a guard brutally strikes down her father. Her father is slain with a flaming sword as their cherished home is set ablaze. A desperate, agonizing scream of "No!" rips through the air. Under the king's watchful eye, scholars perform painful experiments on a terrified Luciella. She is repeatedly drowned and revived in a cruel attempt to awaken her powers. King Ruvitz Algamond relentlessly orders the torture to continue until her power awakens. Luciella recalls how she learned of her demon blood and how it cost her father his life, leaving her to weep alone. As she grew, she learned that dwelling on the past only brought her more pain. 10 years later, an adult Luciella is crucified before a cheering crowd, with the king presiding over her sacrifice. She understands her fate is to be a sacrifice against the demon race. The king visits her cell, admitting they clung to a legend about her power that turned out to be mere superstition. He coldly tells her that at least her death can serve to unite human hearts. At the execution, King Ruvitz Algamond gestures grandly to the assembled crowd. He announces the capture of the loathsome half-demon to the roaring masses. Displaying Luciella, he falsely accuses her of killing countless people with wicked power. He declares that demons must be eradicated and sentences her to death as a warning to all. In a final, cruel moment, the king holds a torch to her face and calls her a worthless waste of his time. His words ignite her fury as she remembers her father, who he stole from her. The bloody, traumatic memory of her father's murder flashes before her eyes. Her gaze fills with pure hatred, realizing her existence was the cause of everyone's suffering. Glaring at the king, Luciella silently vows she will never forgive him. Her rage consumes her as she focuses all her hatred on the one man responsible for her pain. Luciella is engulfed in flames, executed at the stake. Her consciousness returns in a dark void, questioning how she can be in a cell after her death. Lying on a bed, Luciella's eyes snap open in utter disbelief, trying to comprehend what is happening. Luciella sits in her cell, realizing with dawning horror that she has returned to 6 months before her execution. A guard bursts in, tripping over a bucket and cursing his clumsiness. Recognizing the scene from her past, Luciella realizes she is about to be hit. Enraged, the guard turns his frustration on her, preparing to kick her. The memory of her execution solidifies her resolve. She will not die again. Staring past 2 guards at her cell door, she desperately weighs her slim chances of escape. She overhears the guards discussing a dangerous place to the east called the Cursed Forest. They speak of a deadly miasma that kills humans and how the forest connects to demon territory. An idea sparks in her mind as she thinks of the cursed forest and her own demonic heritage. She realizes her demon blood may be the key to surviving where no human can. A powerful, unknown voice suddenly calls out to her, pulling at her very being. She frantically rattles the bars, begging the startled guards to take her to that mysterious place. Her hand bleeds as she grips the iron bar, her desperation absolute. The scene shifts to King Ruvate's Algamond, who appears bored and contemplative on his throne. With a detached expression, he begins to give an order. Luciella is brought before the king and forced to kneel in the throne room. She understands that the voice calling to her spoke of an awakening tied to the cursed lands. Fueled by a burning desire for revenge, she boldly demands to be sent to the cursed forest. She repeats her desperate plea, begging them to take her with them to the forest. As his knights murmur about the forest's danger, King Ruvate's Algamon silences them with a single word. He looks down on her with disdain, demanding she provide a reason for her nonsense. With all eyes on her, Luciella begins to present her case. To her own surprise, a magic stone she possesses begins to glow brightly in her hand. The guards react with alarm, wondering about the source of the incredible light emanating from her. A prophecy is recalled, telling of a half-demon child with the power to rule the world. Bathed in a triumphant glow, Luciella gazes up and commands the court to behold her power. She proclaims that the light is a sign that the very power the king seeks is awakening. A hooded figure standing beside the throne leans in to address the king. He informs the king that a demon's magic stone is known to glow when they wield their power. His interest piqued, King Ruvate's Algamund agrees that sending her might prove worthwhile. He rises, drawing his sword as he delivers a cold warning against any foolish ideas. His menacing gaze promises death should she dare to betray him. With the sword at her neck, Luciella meekly promises to take his warning to heart. Led away on a rope by a mounted guard, she silently swears that she will return. Her eyes burn with cold hatred as she vows to return and kill the king. The guard announces their arrival at the edge of a dark and twisted forest. They venture past the gnarled trees, entering the ominous, cursed forest. Despite a feeling of dread, she knows she must cross the threshold to change her fate. Just as she prepares to step further in, the guard stops her. He demands to know her purpose, and she calmly repeats that someone is calling to her. When pressed, she reveals the identity of the one calling her, the Demon King. The guard erupts in mocking laughter, believing he has just exposed her lie. Shoving her to the ground, he reveals the Demon King was slain 6 years ago, and Luciella realizes her predicament. He taunts her, sneering that this was a pathetic attempt to create a chance to escape. She cries out in pain as she is thrown to the ground. With her hands still bound, she grabs a nearby rock and swings it furiously at the guard. The rock smashes into his head, and he draws his sword in shocked retaliation. The sounds of a brutal, desperate struggle echo through the woods. Standing over the groaning guard, Luciella clutches the bloody rock, her first act of defiance complete. She takes the fallen guard's sword and resolutely walks deeper into the bleak, menacing cursed forest. Exhausted, she pauses, touching a strange, glowing mark carved into a dead tree. She recalls the guard's words. This forest connects directly to the demon territory. With grim purpose in her eyes, Luciella steels herself for the journey ahead. A sudden, brilliant blue light pierces the gloom, catching her attention. She stares in wide-eyed shock at the source of the mysterious glow. Before her, a shimmering blue portal materializes between the gnarled roots of a tree. She holds her sword hilt tightly, thinking that the portal definitely wasn't there a moment ago. Drawn by an unseen force, she cautiously approaches the otherworldly gateway. A pale, glowing hand suddenly emerges from within the portal, reaching out towards her. Luciella wonders, with a mix of fear and hope, if her destination lies just beyond. Hesitantly, she reaches her own scarred hand toward the radiant portal. Clutching the sword, she gazes into the light, questioning what this place truly is. Stepping through, she finds herself in a vibrant, magical forest and wonders if this is the demon territory. Hearing a rustle in the bushes, she draws her sword, ready for a threat. She spins around, demanding to know who is hiding in the shadows. A vicious, glowing-eyed monster leaps from the trees as she realizes her peril. The beast pins her sword with its fangs, and she fears she is done for. As she struggles, she thinks in disbelief that this can't be how her journey ends. A brilliant light suddenly shines from the demon mark on her chest. With a surge of defiance, she resolves that she refuses to let it end in a place like this. Her eye glows with an intense, otherworldly purple light. An incredible power builds within her gaze, focused and ready to be unleashed. A wave of energy erupts from her as she screams at the monster to stay back. Stunned by the blast, the monster recoils in surprise. The creature turns and flees, leaving Luciella's sword behind on the ground. She watches it retreat, panting in stunned silence. Overwhelmed with relief, she collapses to her knees, realizing she's been saved. Clutching her chest, she wonders about the strange power she just unleashed. Her hand hovers over her demon mark as she questions if this is the source of her strength. Her energy spent, Luciella collapses into unconsciousness. Lying on the forest floor, she is discovered by an unknown person. A young man with red hair looks down at her, a familiar black marking visible on his own neck. The scene shifts to a grand manor nestled within a sunlit, peaceful part of the forest. Luciella begins to stir in a comfortable bed as the young man watches over her. As her eyes open, he expresses his relief, telling her he's glad she is finally awake. Luciella bolts upright in bed, startled and on high alert. She stares at the stranger beside her with a look of pure alarm. A close-up reveals the demon mark on the young man's neck. He studies her intently, thinking to himself with curiosity, "A demon?" He calmly repeats his greeting, confirming that she is indeed awake now. Luciella recognizes his tattoo and red stone, realizing with shock that the boy is a demon, just like her. Looking out the window at a distant castle, she confirms that this truly is the demon territory. The young man quietly approaches her, holding a bowl of what appears to be food. He kindly offers her some soup, asking if she is hungry after her ordeal. He holds the warm bowl out to her, a gesture of simple kindness. He starts to say he has a question for her, but his movement triggers a traumatic flashback of the guard about to strike her. In a panicked reaction, Luciella slaps the bowl from his hands, sending soup spilling everywhere. She trembles in fear, clutching the sheets as her past trauma overwhelms her. As Dylan quietly practices writing, Luciella is inwardly confused that he isn't getting angry, even though she was trying to be difficult. He turns to her, noticing her bandaged hands, and quietly asks for her hand. In the sunlit room, Dylan extends his hand toward a surprised Luciella. He looks at her with concern, explaining that it would be a problem if she got burned. Flustered by his unexpected kindness, Luciella wonders why he is so worried about her. Dylan's gaze remains soft and caring as he looks at her. A blush on her cheeks, Luciella tentatively offers him her hand. He gently takes her bandaged hand in his. Dylan explains that she reminds him of someone important, which is why he couldn't leave her. He reveals she reminds him of his wet nurse, who vanished without a word one day. Luciella perceptively asks if he's lonely, catching him completely off guard. Blushing furiously, Dylan defensively shouts that he's not lonely and tells her not to treat him like a child. She smiles warmly, reassuring him that he's much more of an adult than she is. With a gentle expression, Luciella sincerely thanks Dylan for saving her life. Averting his gaze in embarrassment, he dismisses her thanks, saying it was only natural to help. Dylan kindly tells her she can stay in the house until she is fully recovered. The two share a quiet, meaningful look in the warm light of the room. Reaching out his hand once more, Dylan tells Luciella she can rest easy with him. Luciella closes her eyes and smiles, finally feeling a sense of peace and safety. Later, as they sit together for tea, Dylan addresses Luciella with a serious question. He asks her directly why she was collapsed in a dangerous place like that. After hearing her story, Dylan looks at her with sympathy and remarks that her ordeal must have been rough. Luciella looks up from her teacup, questioning his use of the word eldest. Dylan confirms her question with a simple "yeah" as he unrolls a large parchment map. Spreading the map on the table, he explains their current location is a forest called Einvong, while the capital city, Kasdale, is in the center. Luciella thanks him politely, though she internally panics upon realizing that she can't read the demon's writing system. Dylan sadly reminisces about his wet nurse, Cynthia, who suddenly disappeared, revealing that the room Luciella is using was once hers. He looks at her intently, noting that she bears a striking resemblance to Cynthia. With a warm smile, Dylan confesses that meeting Luciella feels like it was fated to be. Thump. Her heart skips a beat as she blushes, managing only a quiet "I see." Noticing the late hour, Dylan wishes her good night and suggests they talk more tomorrow. In her moonlit room, Luciella sits awake in bed, unable to rest. She presses a hand to her forehead, overwhelmed by the day's events and certain that sleep will not come easily. Opening a book left in the room, she finds a diary entry detailing a desperate escape with Prince Dylan during a human army attack. Reading on, Luciella is stunned to learn the writer's vow to protect Dylan, the son of the Demon Lord, whose bloodline must be preserved. A shocking realization hits her with full force. Dylan is the son of the Demon Lord. Her expression shifts to one of cunning resolve as she realizes she might be able to use Dylan to get her revenge. Elsewhere, in a grand throne room, a blonde-haired nobleman rages that she managed to get away. He grips his head in utter frustration, lamenting his decision to ever let her go. A white-hooded figure calmly urges him to be calm, while an attendant apologizes from the floor. The nobleman furiously questions how he could possibly be calm, but the hooded figure insists that the situation is not over yet. With a shadowed, confident smile, the hooded figure tells him to rest assured. He extends a hand, promising His Majesty that everything is still under their complete control. The scene flashes back to Luciella, deep in thought while reading the diary. The weight of her discovery settles in. Dylan is the Demon King's child, a fact that fuels her sly determination. Her plot solidifies as she realizes winning Dylan over could be the key to getting revenge on a man named Levi. The next morning, a delicious and hearty breakfast is spread across the table. Luciella stands in the kitchen, having changed into a simple but clean dress. Dylan appears with a bright smile, cheerfully wishing her a good morning. After she returns the greeting, he notes with a smile that she looks like she slept well. Luciella blushes with relief, remarking it has been a long time since she slept in a real bed. The young man smiles warmly, expressing his gladness before inviting her to join him for a meal. Reading a book outside, Luciella learns of the duty to protect Lord Dylan, the Demon King's child. She looks down with a conflicted expression, wondering if she would use Dylan for her own revenge. With a determined gaze, she continues to absorb the information from the ancient-looking text. Her reading is violently interrupted as a man in armor holds a sword to her throat. He furiously accuses her, shouting that Lord Dylan carries the blood of the Demon King. Glaring with suspicion, he demands to know how she is able to read the book. Luciella glances back, her expression a mix of apprehension and surprise. An unseen person calmly asks what the armored man is doing. Dylan approaches, his presence causing the armored man to pause his attack on Luciella. As the man tries to warn his lord, Dylan addresses him as Ralph, and, with glowing eyes, forbids any disrespect towards his honored guest. A CHK sound echoes as Ralph recoils, stunned by Dylan's command, while Luciella watches. The tension broken, Dylan smiles brightly and invites her to have some tea and sweets. Still slightly flustered from the confrontation, Luciella hesitantly agrees to his offer. The three sit in a tense silence around a small table laden with cookies. Luciella and Ralph simultaneously erupt, demanding to know each other's identities from Dylan. Dylan calmly introduces Ralph as his retainer, who stands with a stern expression. He then explains that he found Luciella collapsed in the forest the day before. Ralph objects to sheltering a stranger, but Dylan sharply reminds him to remember his place. An uncomfortable silence hangs over the table as Dylan stares down his retainer. Luciella considers the situation, realizing what this new information means for her plans. Looking directly at him, she boldly asks Dylan if he is truly the Demon King's son. Dylan apologizes for hiding the truth and confirms his lineage as the son of Demon King Delvard. Gazing out the window, Luciella wonders why the son of the Demon King is living in hiding. Ralph explains that after the king's death, the capital fell to chaos, with nobles opposing Dylan's succession. He concludes that returning to the capital is too dangerous, as they have very few allies. A sudden idea strikes Ralph, and he calls out to Lord Dylan with renewed purpose. Ralph suggests finding Dylan's mother for answers, but Dylan looks pained, thinking of her mysterious departure. Luciella confirms his identity in her mind, seeing him as the key to achieving her revenge against the king. As Dylan watches her with a determined expression, Luciella privately vows to do whatever it takes. She gently cups Dylan's face, softly promising that she will teach him what he needs to know. Her inner thoughts reveal a darker motive, to put a collar on the Demon King's child. In a chilling vision, she imagines Dylan collared and leashed, resolving to make him her pawn. The scene shifts to a quiet desk with scattered notes and a book. While tutoring him, Luciella compliments Dylan on being such a quick learner. Dylan dismisses her praise with a confident smile, calling her dramatic. He claims his rapid learning is natural for a royal, but Luciella counters that praise is also natural. Her words trigger a fond memory of her father praising her whenever she learns something new. Lost in the happy recollection, a genuine smile graces Luciella's face. Dylan observes her, noting that he has never heard her speak of her past before. Luciella gently deflects his observation, insisting that she is also having fun. Outside, Ralph confronts Dylan, demanding to know how long he intends to keep Luciella with them. Dylan urges Ralph to be quiet, but his retainer refuses, too agitated to calm down. Ralph argues that Luciella is undeniably suspicious, no matter how one looks at it. Looking away, Dylan quietly admits that before Luciella arrived, he never realized he was lonely. Ralph insists that, as the Demon King's child, he naturally has an ally in him. Dylan looks taken aback, questioning the meaning of having an ally. He flashes back to memories of being taught and then shunned, realizing those people were not true allies. As Ralph waits for an answer, Dylan looks back at him and says that Luciella is different. Dylan flashes back to a happy memory of Luciella kindly feeding him a meal. He reflects that even after learning his true identity, her kind attitude never changed. In a lighter moment, Ralph speculates that she's just ignorant, and Dylan agrees it's a possibility. Dylan smiles to himself, concluding that there is definitely something different about Luciella. The scene transitions, marked by a soft focus on golden flowers. Sometime later, Dylan and Ralph walk through the sunlit forest with somber expressions. Ralph looks down, his face a mask of deep concern and worry. Elsewhere in the woods, Luciella wonders if it's her fault that the forest creatures have suddenly vanished. She reveals that for the past 2 weeks, she has been secretly doing something for Dylan's benefit. She recalls the first time she unleashed her power, her eyes glowing as she screamed at a threat. She admits she had to confirm that the surge of energy was her own power, not just a coincidence. To test her theory, she found a vicious, glowing-eyed demonic wolf in the woods. A powerful surge of energy emanates from her as she confronts the beast. She reveals her ability to make anyone she makes eye contact with obey her, as the wolf trembles. With glowing purple eyes, she confidently declares that this overwhelming power is her ability. She explains that after repeated experiments, she learned that eye contact is the key to activating her power. However, she quickly learned that her unique ability comes at a high price. She notes that her body has a strange reaction after each use, forcing her to be careful. Her training is interrupted as Ralph suddenly appears, demanding to know what she is doing. He eyes her with deep suspicion, recalling she's a mysterious stranger who can read human writing. He confronts her directly, accusing her of trying to get close to Dylan and demanding her true goal. A whoosh echoes as a burst of intense fire ignites in his hand, showing he means business. Unfazed, Luciella coldly asks him what he thinks he's doing. Showing his fangs, Ralph delivers an ultimatum: leave Dylan's side immediately or die. Luciella calmly asks if Dylan would be angry about his guest being killed, but Ralph retorts that he'll leave no evidence. Surrounded by flames, he confidently states he will simply report that she disappeared on her own. Luciella stands her ground, refusing to leave Dylan, prompting Ralph to prepare his attack. With a powerful motion, Ralph unleashes a barrage of fireballs directly at her. Luciella's eyes flare with an intense, otherworldly purple light in response to the attack. Stunned, Ralph stumbles backward as Luciella walks through the flames completely unharmed. She looks down on him, coolly stating that she has no intention of dying either. As her power radiates, Ralph stares in fear, stammering as he asks what she means. Luciella declares her true objective, with chilling certainty, to make Dylan the next Demon King. She clarifies her allegiance, telling Ralph she hates humans just as much as he does. Ralph realizes her plan, thinking that what Dylan needs most is the Demon King's power. Tilting his chin up, Luciella tells the kneeling retainer she has a question for him. She asks him to finish what he was saying earlier about the dangers of the succession ceremony. He explains that becoming the true Demon King requires a dangerous ritual with a special stone. He warns her that the problem isn't the ritual itself, but what happens after it begins. The immense strain causes a berserk rage, and he reveals most previous heirs died, unable to control their magic. He adds that even though Dylan had many siblings, every single one of them died during the last war. As Luciella listens intently, he concludes that they all perished because they couldn't control their magic. Imagining a bloody Dylan, she desperately searches for a way to ensure he can safely inherit the throne. A sudden, brilliant idea strikes her, as she realizes the potential of her own power. Ralph remains kneeling before her, awaiting her response in the quiet forest. Luciella realizes that with her power, she can suppress Dylan's rampage and guarantee his succession. Ralph's eyes widen as he understands the true implication of her incredible ability. With a confident grin, Luciella extends her hand, offering to help create the perfect Demon King. She looks down at the stunned Ralph and asks if her proposal is such a bad deal. He hesitantly takes her hand, privately vowing that he will kill her someday for this. With their hands clasped in a tense agreement, a new alliance is forged in the light. As Luciella prepares to discuss the succession, Ralph urgently tells her to wait. He explains that Dylan can't succeed yet. He must mature enough for a magic stone to appear on his body, signifying his readiness to receive the Demon King's power. Ralph adds that, besides his age, Dylan is also refusing to become the Demon King, which startles Luciella. The scene shifts to another day, with Luciella continuing her lessons with Dylan. As Ralph's words about Dylan's refusal echo, Luciella wonders why, until Dylan calls her name. During their lesson, Dylan asks how to read a word, and Luciella patiently teaches him. While reading a book, Luciella discovers a diary entry about a woman named Cynthia becoming Dylan's nanny the year before Luciella was born. Dylan reads an entry from Cynthia's diary, realizing with a blush that she was eagerly waiting to meet him before he was even born. Luciella warmly suggests that Cynthia must have treasured him, and Dylan smiles, agreeing he could feel her affection. Dylan reminisces about Cynthia's profound kindness, which filled the void left by his mother, who died at his birth. He recalls her being a mysterious person who understood him completely. A warm memory shows a faceless Cynthia lovingly embracing a young Dylan amidst a field of flowers. As Luciella gently pats his head, Dylan affirms his belief in Cynthia's love for him. Dylan turns the question around, asking Luciella what her family was like. Luciella fondly remembers her father, recalling that he was always laughing, and his favorite word was cute. Dylan teases that she must have been very cute as a little girl, but Luciella laughs it off. With a charming smile, Dylan tells her that now she's less cute and more beautiful. Luciella is left completely stunned and blushing by his unexpected compliment. Playfully pinching his cheek, she comments that he'll be quite the heartbreaker, much to his confusion. She cryptically tells him he'll understand when he's older, leaving him blushing and touching his cheek. Changing the subject with sudden seriousness, she asks Dylan if he truly intends to become the Demon King. His cheerful demeanor vanishes as he explains that the castle holds nothing for him, no memories and no allies. He recalls the painful memories of being constantly watched by cold, expectant eyes. Dylan confesses his past was agonizing, as he was never allowed weakness and had nowhere to run, admitting that returning to the castle and becoming the king is a scary thought. Luciella understands his hesitation, realizing with a pang of sympathy why he fears the throne. Dylan looks at her directly, asking if she wants him to become the Demon King. With a gentle smile, Luciella tells him that the choice is entirely his to make. Dylan is taken aback by her unexpected and supportive answer. Luciella mischievously admits she does want to see what he'd look like as the Demon King, calling it a small ulterior motive. Her silly reason makes Dylan laugh, breaking the tension between them. Dylan looks down with a soft, warm smile, clearly moved by their conversation. Night falls over the quiet house, blanketing it under a bright, full moon. As Dylan wishes her goodnight, Luciella suddenly stops him from leaving. He turns around in surprise, wondering what she wants. Luciella gently reaches out and takes both of his hands in hers. She sweetly tells him it's a little charm to help him sleep well. Smiling, she admits she's just kidding and privately wonders if she's treating him too much like a child. Dylan reveals Cynthia used to do the same thing and asks if it's a famous charm. The gesture triggers a flashback for Luciella of her father doing the same charm for her, which he said he learned from her mother. The memory focuses on her father's hands holding hers, a picture of warmth and love. Back in the present, Luciella gives Dylan a knowing smile and vaguely agrees that it might be. Alone in her room, Luciella contemplates the idea of family and questions if her mother is a demon. She wonders if being in the demon territory might provide clues about her mother's mysterious past. With a jolt of determination, she gets out of bed to investigate. She pulls a book from the shelf, deciding to finally look into something she's been avoiding. The focus shifts to the open diary she was reading earlier. As she handles a book, a torn page flutters out, and she wonders if it's another diary entry. She is shocked to read Cynthia's entry about secretly visiting the beautiful human territory. A flashback reveals a young man finding a woman resembling Cynthia in the woods, asking if she is lost. The diary entry continues with a memory of a cloaked woman and a young man enjoying a festival date. They smile brightly at each other, sharing a happy and carefree moment in the sunlit town. Back in the present, Luciella's expression turns serious as she continues reading her mother's words. A close-up of the diary reveals her mother's joy at finally being blessed with a child. In a tender memory, her father lovingly places his hands on her mother's pregnant belly. Luciella stands in her room, her eyes wide with shock as the story unfolds. A gasp escapes her as a sudden, stunning realization begins to dawn on her. The diary reveals her mother's deep love for her husband and her hope that their daughter would have his wonderful smile. The memory shows a happy, swaddled baby resting in a woven basket. A floral background frames the decision in the diary. Her name will be Luciella. Her parents gaze down lovingly at a baby Luciella, a picture of a perfect, happy family. In the present, tears stream down Luciella's face as she clutches the diary page to her chest. Her mother's final entry reveals her grandfather forced her to return, and that the Demon King, Lord Delvard, was about to have a son, Dylan. She was forced to become Dylan's wet nurse to erase the disgrace of her elopement with a human. A poignant memory shows her mother, Cynthia, holding a sleeping baby Dylan with a look of sorrowful affection. Luciella covers her mouth, sobbing uncontrollably as the heartbreaking truth of her mother's past is revealed. Overwhelmed by grief, she sinks to the floor, whispering her mother's name. A step echoes from the stairs as Dylan calls out, asking if Luciella is feeling better. He explains he was worried when she skipped lunch, and she quickly claims she just needed some sleep. Dylan looks at her closely, pointing out that her eyes are still a little red. Luciella laughs nervously, trying to brush off his concern by blaming it on oversleeping. As he continues to look at her, she shyly tells him not to stare because it's embarrassing. Showing genuine concern, Dylan tells her not to push herself and that she can skip their lesson for the day. He quietly returns to his studies at the table, leaving her a moment of peace. Dylan sits alone, continuing to read from Cynthia's diary. Luciella's internal monologue reveals her guilt. She is using Dylan, her own half-brother, for her revenge. A gasp escapes her as she clenches her fist, lamenting the cruel twist of fate that connects them. While reading, Dylan thinks to himself that with Luciella, at least he won't be lonely anymore. Luciella gazes at him with newfound resolve, vowing to be his family for as long as she's with him. The scene shifts to a later day as a heavy rainstorm pours down on the house. Luciella gently dries Dylan's hair with a towel, telling him it must have been awful getting caught in the rain. She begins to discuss his training but is cut short by a sudden appearance, startling her. Ralph stands before them shirtless, matter-of-factly stating that he is not naked. Flustered, Luciella yells that he's missing the point and should be more considerate, while he calmly points out he's wearing pants. Ralph scoffs at her naivete, and the two begin to bicker as Dylan looks on. Sitting quietly, Dylan thinks to himself that they are at it again. He recalls watching from a window as Luciella and Ralph spoke privately outside. In his memory, he watches them having an intense conversation in the garden. The memory continues, showing Ralph gesturing emphatically while talking to Luciella. Dylan sits alone, thinking about how the two have been secretly spending a lot of time together. He remembers the flustered, happy look on Luciella's face during her argument with Ralph. Clenching his towel, Dylan sadly notes that she has never once shown that kind of expression to him. A deep sense of longing fills him as he realizes their current relationship just isn't enough. He quietly wonders if things will change once he's older. Dylan recalls Luciella's confession that she wants to see him become the Demon King. A blush creeps onto his cheeks as a new, powerful determination fills his eyes. Flash. In the training grounds, Dylan lunges at Ralph with a new ferocity, their swords clashing. He grunts, his expression one of intense focus and newfound resolve. Ralph notes his sudden change in attitude, asking what brought on this new enthusiasm for training. With his sword held ready, Dylan declares that he has finally found something he wants to obtain. Is that so? As they spar, Ralph cautions Dylan not to let his newfound ambition consume him. Sometime later, a peaceful day shows Luciella reading to a slightly older Dylan. The three share a happy meal together, laughing and enjoying a moment of domestic peace. Time passes, marked by the changing of seasons under a bright, clear sky. Chop! In the kitchen, Luciella prepares food while Ralph maintains his sword at the table. A now taller Dylan stands in the doorway, observing the quiet, sunlit scene. Luciella turns with a warm smile, wishing Dylan a good morning as she prepares tea. Dylan, now a full-grown young man, suddenly embraces a startled Luciella from behind. Flustered by his sudden advance, she pushes against his chest in shock. With a charming smile, the adult Dylan tells Luciella that he has kept her waiting. The mark on his neck is now fully formed, a symbol of his power and readiness. The moment is framed by a background of glowing golden flowers, highlighting the shift in their dynamic. Seeing the completed mark on Dylan's neck, Ralph realizes with a shock that the preparations are finally complete. A profound realization dawns. After a long time, the moment has finally arrived. Dylan and Luciella stand before each other, his new height and maturity evident. Luciella asks if he is ready, and Dylan confirms with a confident smile that he has been for a long time. With their decision made, Luciella turns to lead the way forward. Dylan looks down at her with a gentle resolve, announcing it's time to go to the Demon King's castle. Ralph watches them go, his expression filled with serious determination.